Welcome back to the 42284 podcast from beautiful downtown Sunfish, Kentucky. Coming to you from the She Shed. Got Brandon and Kyle and myself, and we've got John Lindsey.
So I've always traded on vehicles, y'all know that. And Kevin will tell you I got like 10 pages in my name down there. They sent me a letter from the state one year when I lived at home, said if I traded any more before the end of the year, I'd have to get my dealer's license. And I was 19 at the time, and I still lived at home when this was like October. So that cut my trading out.
Shut you down for the rest
shut
of
me
the year.
down.
Cost him money is what it did.
Yeah. So I'm without. I've sold all my diesel trucks, and I'm without anything to drive. And I said, "Do you have anything that I can use?" I asked my dad, and he's like, "I'll go ask your mom." I don't know why I had to ask her, but I went and asked her. She's like, "Yeah." So she had this 92 model big station wagon, like a 9-passenger station wagon.
Like Caprice Classic.
Caprice
but it
Classic.
was like an Impala look.
Yeah, it had Corvette wheels on. I mean, it was nice. It power everything. And Dad said, just, ask her if she was all right with it. You can drive that. So I drove that thing. I mean, it floated down the road. My kids were little. They thought it was great. My wife hated it, wouldn't get in it. If she cut a foot off, she wouldn't ride into the hospital. She'd lay there in the driveway and die. So I decided one day, I was just going to drive it to work, and it was pretty good. Went to pick the kids up and everything, and it was a nice fall day, and I decided I'm going to crack the windows a little there. And when I cracked that window, stuff just started flying everywhere. And as the window went down, it got worse and worse. It was like it was snowing. And I thought, what is going on? Well, Durbin had filled the back of that thing level with the back seat where you couldn't see it from the driver's seat, but it was level behind the back seat full of packing peanuts. Full of packing peanuts.
It was four giant garbage bags full. Yeah. They had those things. I said, what y'all do with that? They said, they had something. We're going to throw it away.
Yeah, no, don't do that. Yeah,
I'll take care. Let me get rid of those.
I'll take care of it.
Let me get rid of those for you.
So I come back to work the next day, and I
in my defense, Reed loved it.
Yeah. I walked over to him, and I said, you done well, my friend. But just know, payback's coming. He said, I expect it. So I let it go months and months and months, and I kept having people saving those packing peanuts. He was on call. I went over there and rolled his window down on his truck about 6 inches, and I just started packing that truck full.
Yeah.
I mean, full to the top of the cab. So we had a lot of fun back in the day.
That old foreman with the water guy, the water we messed with, or we were telling you about him using the bathroom beside his truck. He was the king of the pranks.
Oh, boy.
Who hung your garbage can from the top of the pole on when you wasn't on call where you wouldn't have a bucket truck?
That was Kish.
And you had to climb the pole and drop kick it off you.
Well, I climbed the pole. It came a monsoon flood. And I come home one day, I thought, where's my garbage can? And it was dark. I get out there and shine. I thought, somebody stole my garbage can. I figured somebody run it down the road, like D-White and them got. I'm walking back to the house. I'm like, what is up on that pole? And they'd hung that thing off the top of that power pole behind my. It's a 50-foot pole behind my house. I thought, oh. So I brought my hooks in next day and climbed up there. Well, it had monsoon rain. That thing about half full of water. I got up there and cut the rope was on, and when that thing hit, I was on the pole, and when the tires went like that when it hit, it was hilarious. But old Steve, we messed with him. I mean, he deserved every bit of it.
But man, he would pay you back tenfold. Yeah, I'm telling you.
Somebody went out one time. He had a load of alfalfa hay he bought from another one of the guys, and they just brought the trailer in, and he was going to take it home. Somebody went out there and cut one string on every bale.
Oh, ooh,
that wasn't me.
Ooh.
And then one time he said they had a little old tractor there at the water. He said, "You care to go out and load that tractor up for me?" And I said, "I don't care. We got to take it home every now and then and use it." He said, "Take it over to the rock pile and get a scoop of rock." He said, "Them horses where they're coming up to feed," he said, "they're wearing a spot down right there at the edge of my yard. I'd like to put a little rock there." And he said, "I don't really need a whole load." And I said, "Okay." So I go out and get on that tractor, and it had pallet forks on it. I flip them levers, sit them pallet forks off, scoop that bucket, go down, get a load of rock, chain it down. Come in the next morning. He said, "You're funny." So what are you talking about? He said, "You're funny." I said, "I don't know what you're talking about." He said, "I went and pulled that tractor through the yard and went to dump it over the fence, and the bucket and all fell off the front. I didn't latch the bucket down." He said, took me an hour to get the thing out of there.
What was funny was the next morning, I had no idea this was going on. I come walking around the corner of the building. He said, "Come here, let me show you what this idiot done." And I knew exactly who he was talking about. And I said, "What about it, Small?" He said, "He didn't latch a bucket, and I had it full of gravel, and he said, dumped it over on the fence, so like I never got it out." And I said, "Well, which idiot you talking about?" He said, "You know exactly who I'm talking about. The same one that," he said, "You're just like him." He just walked off.
He bought like a 71 model Chevrolet truck and brought it up there. And me and John's like, let's take us out there and show it to us. And so he goes out, he pops the hood. He'd be, "Yeah, look at this." And John'd be over, "Oh, yeah, yeah." And I'd be over unplugging stuff. And then he'd come over on my side, and I look over. He got in it later at night, turned the lights on. He said, "They wasn't a light come on the whole truck. We'd unplugged everything." And then we swapped 2 plug wires. He had a Ford, we swapped 2 plug wires, and it was running rough.
He drove it for months, tuned it up and everything, and didn't realize he had those plug wires swapped.
Yeah, he said, "It's running
Put
like
them right
hell."
back in the wrong place. Thought he was going to take a motor apart.
But he got to messing with me, and I took a can of salmon and opened the top of it and set it under his truck seat. He rode around for like a month, never smelled it. And so finally, Joey got in the truck with him one day and said, "Oh my gosh!" And he couldn't smell it. So he got to looking, and it fell over and spilt all over underneath the truck. He come over, he said, "I'm calling truce. You win. You're the king. I don't want any more." I said, "Okay, you remember that now." But I had that German Shepherd, and I had a Sunfish tailgate, which is a 2x6.
Right.
I tore 2 off already. So
I've got one on my old truck now.
Yeah, I just put 2x6, and that German Shepherd would catch me going out of the driveway and run and jump over that. And I'd get to town, he'd be in the back of the truck. Well, he went to work with me probably once a week, and he had a ball in there, and they'd play with him and stuff. Day before Christmas, it's raining, and it's just warm enough not to freeze, not to be ice or snow. And we had it's Christmas Eve. Mm-hmm. We had a broke pole. I called a couple people, and we're going to change it. I get to town, it's right before daylight. When I go around that curve going into Litchfield, that first street light hits, and that dog's got his hand hanging out in the back. Got ice on his face. I thought, "You idiot, it's just pouring the rain." So when I get up there at the office, I just open the door, and I pull my pickup in there. We go change the pole. That dog stayed in the back of the truck. He'd stay in there for 2 or 3 days if you let him. He loved it. We get back from changing the pole. The dog's still in there. Christmas, I think, was on a Friday, so we go. That's Thursday. Friday's Christmas. Saturday, Sunday, we come back in Monday. That building up there was L-shaped. A 2 L-shaped warehouse. Had a walk-through door between the two. Stayed open all the time. It was electric and water. This old boy we're talking about, I saw him a few days later. He said, "There's been a dog in here." "No? Why?" He had an office over on his side. He said, "Something has been in here." He said, "I think it's a dog." He said, "It's a dog or a bear, one of the two." He said, "Something has been over here, and it has pooped under my desk." And I said, "What?" Because it did not click that I had my dog. And I said, I don't know what you're talking about." He said, "I'm telling you." He said, "It's big." He held his hands up.
big.
He held his hands up. He said, "It's like that big." He said, he said, "I think it may have been a bear." He said, I just can't figure where it would have come from." And I said, "Did somebody put it under there?" He said, No, it was extracted." He said, it's not a brought in with the shovel.
I've done CSI'd it. It's
Yeah.
perfect. It's intact.
Yeah.
But he'd sit down there and got both feet in it. And so later on that day, I'm driving down the road and it hits me. I'd had bullet. That dog's getting a steak tonight. Good boy, boo-boo, good boy. I never did tell him. But yeah, he come over. He was mad over that hay.
A dog.
Yeah, he was mad over that hay. He said, "What kind of lowlife cuts one string?" He said, "I understand cutting a string." He said, "But they cut one string on every bale they could find on the whole trailer."
Yeah, I'd probably got mad over that.
Yeah.
I'm all for
I
a good
did not
joke, but
do
I'd
it.
probably got mad
I
over
didn't
that.
do it either.
I did not do it. I got the blame for doing it. And finally, I laughed like I had done it, but I did not do it.
Well,
I'm cruel, but I'm not like that kind of
In
cruel.
Small's defense, anything that ever happened, I blamed you and you blamed me.
Yeah,
So
I
he
was like,
never
"That
did, and neither
John."
one of us really done anything half the time. But it was going to fall back to one of us, so one of us just had to take the hit on it. I had done. Jeremy done something to him. I don't know what he done, but he thought I had done it. And at the time, you were still on the water, and I just started with electric. And I had old 71 Chevrolet short bed 4-wheel drive, old truck. I loved it. I mean, it was rough, but anyway, I had a brand new one sitting in the house, the garage, and never did drive it.
Drove the old red one around.
Drove the red one around. So we'd worked 2 or 3 days on this ice storm, and they'd released us. I come in to go home. We parked the trucks. I come out the side door, and my truck is just almost on the ground on the back. And I thought, what is going on with that truck? He had put 2 55-gallon drums in the back of my truck and filled them full of water, and they had froze the 2 days that I had worked. Froze solid, and froze to the bed in that freezing rain, and took all the trash out of his truck and threw in my bed, and it rained on it, and it froze. So, everybody's gone at this point, and my toolbox is froze, everything's froze up, and I thought, how am I ever going to get this out? So I had to get a hammer out of my toolbox when I finally got it open, a claw hammer, and beat the ice around those drums and flip those 55-gallon drums out of the back of my truck before I could go home after working for like 2 or 3 days straight. So small will always get you back.
Well, so when we were building that shop up there was a pretty good hill back behind it. And there was one of those black plastic road culverts back there that, I don't know, it's probably 24 inch. And it's probably 12, 15 foot long, maybe 16 foot. And we're standing there. It's laying on top of this hill. And he looks at me. He said, I bet you can't crawl through that. I said, what? He said, I bet you a Coke that you can't crawl through that in 15 seconds. Oh, big boy, you're on. I shot my big butt in there. By the time I got in there, he
In
went.
the middle.
Kicked it off the hill.
That thing felt like it was bouncing 10 foot off the ground by the time I got that hill. Beat me to death. I mean, I come out. I think my nose is bleeding. And him and Chevy were up there just rolling. He said, I cannot believe you. I said, I can't believe I got in there either. But I got my Coke.
Did you ever ride the tractor tire down the hill up
No.
at Tony's cabin?
No.
Oh, man.
No, I never have done that.
Did you do that?
No, absolutely
I don't know
not.
that I'd ever fit in one. I mean, it had to be a big one.
Me and Billy Sanders got in it one time. Rear tractor tire,
That explains
head to
a lot.
toe.
Mm-hmm.
It felt like we was running 50 mile an hour down there. And all I can remember is somebody saying, push him over, because we was headed for that
lake?
that holler.
Oh.
You know where the
Oh,
it
yeah.
was that
Wow.
long
Uh-huh.
narrow field, and then the woods was off the left. And I don't know who, but just somebody runs up beside of us and pushes us over. We got to going so fast down through there. I ain't no telling how fast we was running down through
Explain that
there.
right there.
Yeah, it does.
That's a lot right there. Yeah.
I won't say this for you all. This is a good thing you're doing. I mean, reliving some of this stuff and telling these stories. My bunch was from South. We all knew each other, but y'all kind of stayed down here. We kind of stayed up there, unless we had to have a whooping on somebody else. A group whooping on somebody. So, and it was just a fun place to grow up, and remembering this stuff, documenting this stuff is really
Well,
good.
that's what when I was a kid, I would sit around down here in the store and I'd listen to my grandparents and uncles and Brandon's family and, Kyle's dad and all the people working down there. And I remember very little of what I heard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's a shame because it's good times.
Well,
I mean, we grew up in a good
nobody
time.
sits around and even talks like this anymore.
Right, yeah.
Everybody's too busy. Got too much to
Agreed.
do.
Well, let me say this on the record for anybody that wants to know. Vitchell Clay Stewart was one of the best men that I was ever around in my life.
Oh, yeah.
He was.
John's papa.
That's John's papa. I guess your farm and your mom's place and
yeah,
your
all
uncle's place, that was all his place up there.
Yeah.
When we first opened the station, Vitchell Clay come plumb to Brownsville to buy gas off me,
Yep.
just because he growed up with Mama Dorothy and them.
Yeah.
For no other reason than that. Could have drove to any little store around here, but drove however many
Yep.
miles that is over there. And I mean, he was the guy that was still from the 50s, that high and tight haircut,
Yep.
friendly. Never seen him out of the way on anything in my life. One of the best men that I was ever around in my life. Mitchell Clay Stewart.
He was the most loyal human, I think. And it was a privilege to grow up around him. And I didn't realize, I realize now, but I didn't realize how much I learned from him. Just about
You just
life.
learned you didn't even know you was learning.
I had two great grandpas. My dad had to work a lot. My mom worked a lot. And I spent a lot of time with my grandparents, and they taught me a lot about living, being a good person, doing the right thing. You may help somebody. If you help somebody do it for the right reason, you can forget about it. You know what I mean? Don't look for something to pay back. You just help somebody because It's the right thing to do.
Exactly.
You know, and that's the way he was. And I've got a story on him. So my uncle had a kind of a buy here, pay here car lot there in Litchfield. And he had traded for a Volkswagen Beetle that had a set of 33 1250s on the back of it, white spoke wheels. And he told me and my cousin, he said, if y'all come up $200, I'll let you have that car. Well, we just whipped out our money that we'd worked for, you know, and bought that car. We were both in like middle school. So he brings it down to Papaw's farm, pulls it up in the driveway, and Papaw comes outside. And we say, Papaw, we bought this car, but we don't have anywhere to drive it around. You care if we drive it around here? He said, boys, that's fine. He said, there ain't but 2 rules. We're so like, okay, what is it? He goes, if you tear the fence down, fix it. You know, and stay away from the cattle. Don't be chasing the cattle. You know, he cared a lot about his cattle.
Sure.
He was a good farmer. He kept his
He took pride in his
took
place.
pride in everything
yes,
that he done.
He sure did.
He said, other than that, do whatever you want to. So, I mean, we would jump this car. If we wore one field out, we'd rotate the cattle to the other side of the road. And we would move them. He didn't care. You know, he was watching. So, one day, Mom's there, and she's getting ready to go to town, and we're walking over to the barn that I own now. The car was sitting over there. And she gives me this 5-minute speech about how she don't want to see me driving that car, and she better not see me driving that car, or it's going to be, you know, big trouble. And I said, okay, Mama. We turn around, make about 2 steps. My cousin looks at me. He goes, I guess you fixing to drive that car, ain't you? I said, yeah, as soon as we get over there.
You know we are.
Yeah. So we get over there, and she backs out of Papaw's driveway and takes off up the road like going towards my driveway now. And I pass her in that field where my pond and stuff is. I jump that ditch, and I pass her, get beside her going up the road in the field that I own now, you know, where Glenn lives, and look over at her and wave like that. And she looks at me and just locks that car up and just slides her around the road and heads back towards Papaw's. Well, I take that car and drive back there to the woods behind where my house is now. Me and my cousin, we can see Papaw's house, but we're sitting there. We just shut it off, and we're just sitting there because we know she's not going to walk back there and whoop me. You know what I mean? So I'm sitting back there, and we wait her.
She'll cool off after a while.
We wait her out. Finally, she gets in the car. She takes off. Papaw's standing in the front yard. He kind of motions. You know, he knew what we were doing.
The all clear.
Yeah, he waves his arm, and we run back up there. I pull up there, and he walks across the road, the fence, and I said, well, what'd she say? He said, well, she wasn't happy. And he said, she was telling me what she was going to do when you pull back up here. And he said, I looked at her and said, Brenda, he said, was there anything that you done that I don't know about when you was away from home? When you was out running around? And she's like, well, probably. He goes, well, why don't you just chalk this up to you don't know what's going on and go on about your day and don't worry about it. And that was the last time anything was ever said to me.
That's pretty wise right there.
Yeah. And he, you know, after Mama passed away, he got kind of lonely. And this, I raised a big garden. Haley and I raised a big garden, and you know, we do some canning and stuff. But he took pride in his garden. I mean, there wasn't a weed in it nowhere, and he would always look forward.
Well, Beach Clay had his garden out in front.
Yeah.
If there's a guy that's got his garden you can see from the road,
Yeah.
you know he takes pride in it.
Yeah, I hide mine behind the garage.
That's exactly right. Yeah, if you miss a day or two holding it out or something like
I was
that.
going to say,
But
anybody
people,
that's raised a garden knows that. I mean, it's hard to keep
people
them
that's got a
spotless.
garden in the front yard or
Yeah.
in the side yard where people sit, hey, they're taking care of their garden.
Yeah, and you know, he raised that garden, and this was his favorite time of year. He'd wait for new potatoes to come in. He'd fry them and have fresh corn on the cob, and tomatoes and stuff like that. And I would stop and visit him, you know, in the afternoons. I was still living at home. I stopped and visit him, and he'd always say, won't you eat supper with me, son? And of course, I had stuff to do.
Sure.
And I finally thought, you know what? I need to spend some time.
We'll
with
make
him.
time.
Yeah. So I would eat, and man, he cooked good. Had biscuits and gravy and stuff too. And about the second or third time I'd done it in a row, I said, Papa, Mom's fixing supper. What am I going to tell her when I get home and I don't want to eat? He said, just tell her you don't feel good. He said, she'll never know. And I said, well, that makes sense to me,
right.
you know? So I go home. Mom's like, I got, you know, fix spaghetti or whatever. I'm like, I don't feel good. I just go in my room, go to bed. You know what I mean? So about a week and a half into it, we're sitting there. Of course, his kitchen table was right in front of that big old window, you know, where you could see out, see the road. People could see in. You know, he didn't have any blinds or anything on it. And I see Mom pull up there. I see her kind of drive by, stop, and then back up, pull in. And I said,
caught.
I said, uh-oh. He said, what do you mean? I said, here comes Mom. He goes, just keep eating. I got this. So I just kept eating it. She come in there and she said, is this why you hadn't been eating supper? And I said, yeah, sure is. She said, well, why have you been telling me that you don't feel good? I said, because he told me to tell you I didn't feel good. And he looks up at her and she said, well, that'll work.
That's fine.
She just walks out and gets a car.
Well, that's what I want to know.
Drives off. And that was it. But Papa, he was a carpenter all his life, you know, and he was working on a doctor's house there in Litchfield, and he cut the end of his finger off in the table saw, and it was just hanging by the meat. And the doctor that he was building the house for said, well, I'll sew it back on. And he did, done a good job it took, and he sewed it back on, but it was a little crooked, you know, kind of pointed sideways. And Mom said when they'd get in trouble, of course there was 5 of those kids, he'd sit them down on the couch, and he would be pointing at them, talking to them, and they'd all say, well, he's not pointing at me, he's
which
pointing
one
at
is
you."
it?
Yeah. He said, then we all got a whipping, you know?
He just covered the whole crowd.
Yeah, yeah. Blanket whipping for everybody. But
he's from different, just generations back
him
on.
and Uncle Roy, yeah. I mean, he gave my cousin and I a box of shotgun shells apiece to sit out there and watch his garden one summer. For a week or so, corn was coming in, the birds was eating up. He said, I want y'all to kill everything that flies across this garden. Well, when Papa tells you that,
Game on.
yeah. So he gives us the box of shells, and when he sets them down on the table, you can see his mind kind of roll back to something else. He goes, you know, they grew up in the Depression and stuff like that, and my great-grandpa, you know, y'all stayed in that old house that he lived in and stuff years ago. He said, I remember he gave Roy and myself some shells, a couple shells apiece, and he said, if you come back with an empty shell and not something to show for it, I'm going to take a belt to you. You know, those were hard times.
Sure they were.
Yeah.
Do you remember what year he was born?
I don't.
He's older than Mama. Mama was born in 35, I'm pretty
I was
sure.
going to say, I would guess in the 30s.
And
That's
Papa
when
Kurt was
John
born
A.
in 31. I
John
bet he
A.
was
was
more
in
on
the
that
30s.
line
Yeah.
than I don't know if he would have been earlier than that or not.
Right.
But I know Mama was born right over here in this place across the road. And she said that her mom, Grandma Luley, I don't know if y'all remember her or not, Grandpa Dennis, Grandma Luley.
Yeah.
Of course, that's peak Depression
This one right
time.
down here?
Yeah.
So Little Willard was the one that lived there when we were little. Who was it?
That's my Grandpa Dennis's original farm.
So who was
The Oscar place
Yeah.
and Dennis were brothers.
So who was Willard to you?
Nothing. He just got out of the
Just
family.
lived there.
When he sold that and they bought that farm down here,
What was Willard's last name? Do you remember?
Hayes.
Okay.
Yeah, Willard Hayes.
Was he in on your bunch?
Nah, if he was, it would have been distant.
Yeah. He couldn't talk plain.
Yeah, he drove a truck toast to toast. You remember that? You remember that? He does put me in a mind about that. You mentioned that.
Oh, my Lord.
He did. He was built kind of like, he had a resemblance to Warren.
Yeah.
I mean, not laughing, but I mean,
Here they go.
Yeah.
Well,
You
I
thought
mean,
it was going
I
to be
don't
my
think-
night. It's your night.
I
Looks like.
know.
I don't think he had
That's
anything-
all right. I'm the one that edits
That's
it.
right.
I
Yeah.
don't think he had any physical problems, did he? I think
Well,
it
it
was
was,
just an impediment.
Yeah, it was they used to call it a tied tongue, I think, back in the day,
Yeah.
but it was probably something with the, what's that little doodad underneath
Keep
your
talking, you'll
tongue?
get there.
Yeah.
We would
That
go,
little doodad was too far out, and he just couldn't talk.
we would
plain.
go up. We had cows up there, and we would go up there, and he'd come out and sit and just rattle, and I remember thinking, I have no idea what he's saying.
Yeah.
But him and John A had full conversation.
Yeah, if you was around him long enough, Dad, he could translate, but Mom never could. So when he had that heart attack, he was trying to tell Mom he had a heart attack, and Mom didn't understand what he was saying. And he was going, huh? Yeah. And he's beating himself on the chest. And Dad said, for heaven's sakes, Mac, he had a heart attack. You make him have another one. He let it go till he thought it was danger point,
Well,
But anyway, Grandpa Dennis, this was his
Okay.
dad's place. That was one place at the time. And then Grandpa Dennis got this part, and Uncle Oscar got the other part.
Okay.
But I've heard Mama say that Grandma said that they went a whole year and never seen a piece of money during those times.
yeah.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
So they were pretty self-sufficient back then, garden, cows, milk, that sort of thing. And then down here at the store, I think the old store,
Down on the bridge.
down at the bridge,
Yeah.
that, maybe you got a little sugar or coffee and you trade some eggs or something like that in to
Have
get
I
that.
showed you all a picture of that old store I've got?
No.
The old Duval Mercantile?
No.
Yeah, I'll send it to you. I've got a picture of it from it almost was taken from Otis and Marie's yard.
Yeah.
You can see the bridge and see the house and the barn and stuff beside it.
Yeah.
And I think you can see the old cat place across the road, which is my great grandparents' place.
You know, Papa.
But you said that it made me think. What I was getting around to after Grandma left her house, we was cleaning it out, and we found a Glad sack full of bread ties.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We found spools, thread spools, which I don't know what in the world you'd use a thread spool for.
Well, if you had a mouse
she-
to roll it around,
but
you know
she-
what I'm saying? Green Mile.
But she,
Skateboard wheels.
but she had dozens of those.
Yeah.
You know, just for not throwing them away. Just things that she had kept made my mind run back to what you were talking about, that shotgun. You know, you don't get out of that mindset of depression, save everything, don't throw anything
I bought that
away.
low place over there, and they bought it before. They gave $400 for that farm before the Great Depression, and I bet they never thrown anything away. There were so many mason jars, you know, and I'm sure people now would want them, but at the time I tried to give them away. A lot of them were still full, so I got my old Scotty's garbage can out there, and I'd take those jars, and I'd hold them over to hit the hammer, and they'd just bust. I filled that thing completely up with shards of glass. Took 2 of us to get it to the edge of the road. Ex-wife said, well, Scotty's probably not going to be happy with us. I said, why? She was home. She said, oh boy, bounced off that truck, come running down, grabbed that can, turned around and said his feet come out from under him. Said didn't move. Said his feet ran out from under him. Said he stopped, got that other hand and just scooted it over to the...
Hit that lever.
It was. Well, I remember Papa, you know, sitting in his shop on a rainy day. Of course, he'd retired at this point, and you know we were always building.
Did he
something.
work big construction
Yeah,
for a while?
worked for he was superintendent for Great Construction.
Great, that's what I was thinking. Okay, go
And
ahead.
Uncle Jerry was over the Eastern Division. He lived in Lexington until he had his aneurysm and stuff and moved back home. But I seen Papa take and straighten that old steel table that I've got in my shop that we overhauled those cylinders on, that big steel table. I've seen him take cans of bent nails and straighten them out with a claw hammer
To reuse.
them.
Right.
When he had enough money to buy every how many nails he ever wanted to buy,
Right.
you know. But
It's a
you,
mindset. It's not about a bank account or a number. It's a mindset.
And I'm gonna tell you something. If you ever try to straighten a nail, it's kind of hard to get them right. When he got through with them,
They straight.
they were straight.
Yeah.
And
He'd done that before.
yeah, well, and his brother, of course, Uncle Roy, cut hair for years and years at Litchfield, and him and Hugh and Sanders cut hair together. And I never will forget Harold. I went to school with him anyway. He come in there one day, and Hewlin had got one of those barking dog collars for his dog, and they talked Harold into trying his collar on. And Uncle Roy's cutting my hair, and I don't know, you know, Uncle Roy, if he cut around your hair, you know, your ears and stuff, he used a straight razor.
Yeah.
And he'd shave your neck with
He
a straight
hold
razor.
that hand up and let it shake.
Yeah.
Go to cut it.
Yeah,
Like Bill Tom.
sucking on that Marlboro while he's doing it. And the older he got, the more I prayed I didn't lose an ear, you know. So Harold comes in there that day, and they talk him into trying the dog collar on. Hewlin wanted to see if that thing would work, so he talked to Harold. He said, look, I'll give you $5 to try it on. So Harold puts it on. He said, now bark. Of course, Uncle Roy's cutting my hair, you know, and I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, man, this is going. They had like an old fountain or something in the middle of it.
So
wasn't it?
John's Uncle Roy was my ex-grandfather-in-law. I was married to his granddaughter. Oh, they had a sink.
Yeah,
I mean,
big
there
sink.
a
That's what it
sink, and
was.
that's where they would, you know, wash the rays. But it'd sit right in the middle of the floor.
Big, you know, looked like a bird bath type thing. But anyway, so Harold puts the collar on and he barks, and Hewlin said, no, you got to bark loud.
You got to cut down on
Yeah,
it.
yeah. So he really did, and well, when he did, it lit him up. Well, when he started getting shocked, he started screaming. Well, the more he screamed,
The worse it was.
got. And Uncle Roy is at this time shaving around my ear with a straight razor and
Roy was
laughing.
what, 70?
Yeah,
75 at the time?
laughing and smoking a cigarette. And I'm sitting there, so I don't want to laugh so bad, but I'm afraid to move.
You're going,
you know? Yeah. So he comes around, Harold spins around and kicks that chair I'm in, and I feel a nick, and I thought, oh boy. And Uncle Roy goes, hang on, said, hang on just a minute. And he gets a piece of towel and lays it on there. He said, if you don't care, just keep holding that. I'll go around
hold that for me.
Yeah. And at this point, I'm thinking, I've lost an ear. I don't know what's going on. You know, I can feel a little bit of pain.
This guy's getting electrocuted.
Yeah. And Harold is still flopping like a chicken in the floor. Hewlin just tackles him.
They had to wrestle him down, didn't
Yeah, wrestles him down and gets hold of him and finally gets it off. And Harold hits that door and was gone. I mean, just wide open. And, you know, I did lose part of an ear, but it wasn't that big a deal. It grew back. But, you know, it was just, you know, that was just the way things were, you know. But that was one of the few times I think That's when I started cutting my own hair. I want to tell you this real quick. I mentioned Uncle Jerry a while ago. Of course, he passed away back in the spring.
Yes.
You know, he was kind of Papa all made over.
He's good people, too.
Yeah, and I loved him. Me and him were really, really
Wasn't he
close.
a great musician?
Yeah, he could play. He could play about anything.
I thought he used to play guitar with my stepdad.
And so when Aunt Wanda passed away, Roy's first wife, Dad and I were pallbearers, and I was in middle school, early in high school, whatever. I don't remember what it was, but anyway. So we're standing there in front of the church, and our church parking lot kind of rolls down towards the church. And Dad and I, they're backing the hearse up, and we're getting ready to carry her in and everything. And Uncle Jerry comes whipping in there between the hearse and the flyer car, and this old Tornado that he drove. The Tornado door is about 8 foot long.
They're the length of the car.
Yeah, and the door weighs about 950 pounds.
They saved money because they didn't have a body. They just put a door on it.
Yeah, and so he used to wear those old cockroach killing boots, with the chrome tips on them and stuff.
Brandon still got a pair he puts on. He drives his truck.
Does he?
Yeah. and his belt buckle.
Man, now you screwed me up. But anyway, so Uncle Jerry goes to get out of the car, and he puts his cowboy hat on, and he gives that door a little nudge to get out. Of course, the door kind of swings out, starts coming back. And I'm watching him, and I could tell by the expression on his face that he's getting a little aggravated. So he just gives her a good old shove with that boot, gets one leg out, and by the time he does, this car whips in from up Litchfield and hits that door and just hurls it. Peels it around the front fender. Well, I start snickering, and Dad hits me so hard in the back of my head that my heels lift off the ground. And I said, "What'd you do that for?" He said, "You need to act right, so we're fixing to pack somebody in."
Right.
And I said, "Did you not see that?" He said, "Listen, we can laugh about it later.
Right.
But right now, we're going to do the right thing." And so we get her carried in. In my head, it's just, I can feel his handprint burnt in the back of my
He
head.
hit the baloney road.
Oh, he did. He did. And we get her carried in, get things settled. He said, "Come outside." So we go outside, and I thought, well, this ought to be fun. I thought he was going to slap me again or something. We walk out there, and he goes, "I believe that was the funniest thing I've ever seen." He said, help me fix this door. So we peeled it back around, then we had to fix it because, we always worked on junk. But
I wish he'd have been around the last time I was a pallbearer with somebody.
Well, we need to figure out how to tell that.
I wish he'd have smacked you in the back of the head. I wish somebody had smacked you in the back of the head.
Kyle sitting on the front row, pallbearer giggling.
Oh, my Lord. Don't tell it. Don't tell it.
I'm gonna say. I told him, I said, because we were up there. I said, they just think we're tore up.
yeah,
And I'm telling you what, I ain't never been to a funeral like that again. Have you?
Or the night before.
Or the night before?
Yeah, I got volunteered into that.
I got asked to be a pallbearer, and I said, "Yeah, I do it." I said, "Oh, Kyle,
Yeah,
do it."
and
too."
Kyle will do it too.
yeah. Don't you love it?
Kyle said, "I guess I can."
Yeah.
But so you talking about the barbershop up there? It was Roy and Hewlin, and they had this guy in there named David.
Yeah, I forgot about David.
Is David still alive?
I don't know if he is or not.
So David had an arm that was messed up. It was something, he had an injury. And so this went on. I go in there, and they'd be like 6 or 8 people waiting in line for Roy and Hewlin, and old David would be sitting over in his chair. And I'd feel sorry
That's
for
the
him.
first sign that you don't accept.
I'd feel sorry for him. And I'd say, "Dave, you gonna cut my hair?" Yeah. He'd cut it, and I'd come home. The wife would say, "Sit down here, let me straighten that up." I don't know why you don't just wait for Papaw.
Yeah.
And Roy never would charge. He would not let me pay him, because I was married to his granddaughter, but I'd always pay David. And so I finally said, "Roy, what happened to David's arm?" He said, I said, "He was on a motorcycle." Said he killed 3 deer. And I said, "Really?" He said, "Yeah." I said,
Wow.
Dang. I said, "I bet it tore up motorcycle all the heck." He said, "I didn't hurt the motorcycle." He said, "He killed 3 deer." And I said, "Really?" And they jumped out, and he done something. It throwed him off, and he hit 3 of them and killed them. And it messed his arm up. But it was
that's a
permanent.
lick.
And so he had little. He can't believe it. So he had little
Bowling for deer.
He had a little OS 10 truck as a 5-speed. he would go up there. They parked on the square, and if you park on that square more than 2 hours in Litchfield, they write you a ticket. Well, the way they mark it is, or where they figured out, they take a piece of chalk, mark your tire. Or I don't know how they do it now, but that's how they do it then. Well, David would watch for them come around and mark tires. So as soon as they got outside, he'd go and wipe it off. And so this went on forever. Royce I looked out one day, said he's down on them knees, wiping it off. Looked up, said the cop was standing there. Said David said, "Give me your chalk." So one of his chalks, he's marked back, went back inside.
You can get that line straight. Can we see it? But I'm trying to fix it.
We were at work one day, and the sirens went off, and I mean, everything broke loose. Bright sunny day, and they were all going toward the square. And I thought, what in the world? We got off work. You couldn't even get through the square. I got home. You know, it's before really everybody had cell phones. Later that night, come in. Wife said, "Hey, did you hear about the square today?" I said, "No, what happened?" So there was a wreck on it. So they run through the window. What's the department store on the left?
Big 7, the furniture store.
Yeah. So the truck went through it, but went through it backwards. I said, "Backward?" Yes, somebody lost control, I guess, and went through it backwards. Huh. Next day, go in, Miller says, "What about your pappy-in-law's partner in there?" I said, "I don't know what you're talking about." He'd went out in that little OS 10 truck he had, pushed the clutch in, started up, put it in reverse, and started letting off, and the clutch pedal, the master cylinder, went out.
Yeah.
Well, he got all tore up and hit the gas. He made 3 circles out there in that right there by that square, and then run through the big 7 and start backwards in that little S10. So I go up there and see Roy and ask him about it one day. He said, "I don't know." He said, "But that ain't nothing." He said he got to ride in the
He said,
motor.
"That ain't nothing. He killed 3 deer."
3 deer.
I told you about the deer.
He said last summer he got to ride a motorcycle into work. I said, "How's he ride a motorcycle with that arm?" You know, because I mean it was like it was stationary here, right? He said he got to riding in like old CB 350 or something. He said me and Hewlin slipped out there and pulled the plug wire off of it. Said we did. He said we sitting there. He said we normally leave before him. He said but we waited. So he goes out and so he starts that old motorcycle up. So it's going. Blah, 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 blah. He said he's looking at it. He said that plug wire's laying down. He said we thought he saw it. He said before we get him stopped, he just took off. He said next day he calls and says, Roy, I ain't gonna be in today. So I ain't feeling good. Roy said, okay. So he missed 3 or 4 days. So finally come in and said, he's skint up. I said, David, what happened to you? He said, I was going home the other day. He said, that old motorcycle running rough. He said, I looked down. He said, well, them plug wires off. He said, I just reached down and stuck it on there. He said, that thing backfired and blew the exhaust off. And he said, it was a hell of a wreck. But he took that plug wire off. Can you imagine him not holding a handlebar, letting go, sticking a plug wire on, and it backfired and blowing the exhaust off? Skin him.
I thought you was gonna say 3 deer again.
No, the 3 deer was years, like in the 80s. Him and my dad were buddies. My dad one time told me, said, worst motorcycle wreck I ever had in my life was with this old
How
boy.
many motorcycles did this man wreck?
He liked them.
Apparently.
Just wasn't good at riding them.
I was going to say,
Let me tell you. I said,
slow,
what?
but I'll learn after a while.
Yeah, it's like you and the horses, isn't it?
Ain't that the truth? I've learned after the second one.
Yeah.
I
Pretty
said-
quick learner.
Yeah.
I
Yes.
said, what happened? Dad said, I never told you about that motorcycle wreck I had? I said, no. He said, I'm telling you. He said, I ain't never been hurt as bad in my life if I was on that. That's what happened. He said, we'd been down Bowling Green at a party, and he said, we kind of woke up that next morning at the party all hungover. Said, we'd rode the motorcycle there. I guess that's back when it was cool for 2 dudes to ride motorcycles. I told Dad, I said, don't do that.
I seen 2 leave from work down there not too many years ago and go to lunch on one.
Really? Mm-hmm. Hell, Dad said they pulled up to the stoplight down there in Bowling Green. Said this old boy was driving. Said Dad was on the back. Said we pulled up stoplights and neither one of us put her feet down.
Just fell over.
He just fell over. He said, I'm telling you. He said it was the worst motorcycle wreck I've ever had in my life.
I don't think he'd ever had any like that old boy had.
Well, you know, we used to rip and roll on dirt bikes. We could go in up there by Benny's, go down the creek, come all the way down the creek, and come out right up here somewhere, and come to Sunfish Mall and eat us a sandwich because the law got on us so hard. I mean, they'd watch for us. You know, we'd come down the road, all my cousins and stuff like that, Jeremy and Aaron, all of us, we'd come down the road on a dirt bike, just go wherever we wanted to. It wasn't hurting anybody. And Shane got an old motorcycle and went to riding with us, and it was kind of junky. And we pulled out there by the old store at South and was headed up towards BJ's, going to ride up in the woods. And state trooper fell in behind us. And, of course, we do what any young model citizen do.
Hit the dirt.
Run. Yeah, we run. Well, his dirt bike quit on him. So we finally made it to Benny's. We get up there on the carport, and we're sitting there, and here comes this trooper car down the road. He's pushing that dirt bike in front of that car, and the blue lights is going and stuff like that.
So he's walking beside it.
He's walking beside it, making push it all the way down there. And, of course, he could have just told him he was going to my house, which would have saved him a half a mile.
Yeah.
But no, he said he was truthful with him, told him where he's going, so he made him push it all the way down through there.
Well, that got to going on back in the mid-'90s or late 90s, early 2000s. Here they got pretty hot on us. We had a mutual cousin that had a Yamaha Banshee. He got to run her up down the road out here passing cars on it.
Yeah.
I ended up getting that before you come park going down the road. I got that four-wheeler, and the wrist pins were in the exhaust of the Pistons. I mean, it was an explosion when it finally gave up. But
Sometimes he would pass him doing a wheelie.
he could ride a wheelie. Well, no, Scotty Higgs probably ride a wheelie farther than. I wish we would get Scotty on here to tell about running from all over in Brownsville.
In Brownsville, across the ball field.
Yes, I just turned around and gave him the finger.
John, we appreciate you coming and being with us.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, appreciate it. Been fun.
I've been with y'all since the beginning.
Good. Share the wealth. Tell all your buddies.
Yeah.
I'll tell both of
we're
them.
worldwide.
Yeah, I know.
We made national news with advertisement.
Did you?
Yeah, and we've got
What channel?
Yeah.
CBS national.
No, what
news.
channel?
All of them.
All the CBSs.
All of them.
All right, everybody. Thanks for listening.
See y'all.